भाइयों बहनों, नए फाइनेंशियल ईयर में हम लाए हैं आपके लिए नए सब्सक्रिप्शन प्लान्स। इसमें नेशनल प्लान्स हैं, इंटरनेशनल प्लान्स हैं। देखिए, हम यूट्यूब का ज्वाइन बटन उपयोग में नहीं लाते हैं, इसलिए हमने ये सब्सक्रिप्शन प्लान्स बनाए हैं जिनसे हम एक कॉर्पस फंड बना रहे हैं जो हमारे राष्ट्रीय और हिंदू हितों में काम लिया जाएगा। और इसमें नेशनल प्लान्स आरंभ होते हैं $100 से और इंटरनेशनल प्लान्स आरंभ होते हैं $5 से। इनके सबके डिटेल्स विस्तार से आपको डिस्क्रिप्शन में मिल जाएंगे, वहाँ जाइए और क्लिक कीजिए। साथ ही हमारे इस अप्रतिम अभूतपूर्व कंटेंट के लिए आप हमें सहायता तो करते ही हैं। ऊपर जो आपको दाहिने हाथ में टॉप पर जो QR दिख रहा है उसको स्कैन करके हमें फाइनेंशियली सपोर्ट करते रहिए, जिससे हम ये अभिनव कंटेंट आपके लिए लाते रहें। नमस्ते, आप सभी का स्वागत है आज के इस कार्यक्रम में। और आज हमारे साथ हैं कालावाई वेंकट जी। आप जानते हैं, पहले आ चुके हैं जयपुर डायलॉग्स पर। कालावाई वेंकट जी से आज हम बात करेंगे राम जन्मभूमि और उसके ग्लोबल इम्पैक्ट, ग्लोबल रिएक्शंस और एक तरह से एक ग्लोबल पर्सपेक्टिव, उसके बारे में बात करेंगे। तो आपका स्वागत है कालावाई जी, वेलकम टू द जयपुर
नमस्ते
डायलॉग्स।
नमस्ते संजय जी, जय श्री राम। स्वागत एवरीवन।
जय श्री राम, जय श्री राम। तो राम जन्मभूमि के जो है ये भारत में तो बहुत बड़ा इवेंट था, बाहर ये कैसे देखा गया? What was the reaction abroad?
So among the Momins, it has been a double whammy. So they are imploding. क्योंकि पहले यहाँ प्राण प्रतिष्ठा हुआ था. Then Modi ji went to UAE and then he consecrated the Swaminarayan Mandir. So that was, adding insult to injury for a lot of Momins, and they are exploding. And one of them is Yasir Qadhi. I do not know whether our audience are familiar with him. So maybe we can start with who he is and how he reacted to this, and how do we respond to that? Correct?
Okay.
All right. So Yasir Qadhi is a sheikh and imam. Okay, he is of Pakistani origin, but he was born and brought up in the U.S. But he also lived for many years in Saudi Arabia. He went to Medina. So he is one of the very fundamentalist Muslim imams. He studied in Imam. He studied in Medina. Then he goes to Yale University where he does his PhD. So he has got this external trappings of an academic, right? So he's having a PhD. Went to Yale University, but three of his students are also convicted jihadis.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
so he's a very interesting character because when we talk about Hindu scholars, they are mostly those very very formal, very academic type people, but our Islamic scholars are very different. Okay, so three of them are
They practice
convicted.
what they preach.
Yeah, they practice what they preach. Okay, and one of them was the most famous. He was the infamous underwear bomber. His name was Umar Abdul Mutallab. Okay, have you heard of him?
Not
So in
really.
the
Can't
so in
recall
the year
offhand.
yeah, so he's of Nigerian origin, and then he carried a plastic explosive in his underwear, and he tried to get on a plane. I think it
Yes,
was in
I
Amsterdam.
remember it.
Yeah,
I
and he was trying
remember.
to blow it up, and he was a student of Yasir Qadhi. Okay, वो
Okay.
पकड़ा गया. Okay, पकड़ा गया, and then the jihadi went to jail, and I hope he's still rotting in the jail until this day, because Americans छोड़ते नहीं है ऐसे लोगों को. Then second was his second jihadi student was a Somali Al Qaeda fighter. Okay, so वो भी पकड़ा गया. Okay, he was also caught. Okay, so that's number two. And then third was another jihadi who wanted to become a sniper, and he wanted to train his gun on an American mall and kill some shoppers and innocent people. So he was also caught. So I do not know what you call a person, three of whose students are convicted jihadis, suicide bombers, and whatnot. So I think, for the lack of better words, shall we call him a living room jihadi? Because there are
Okay.
two types of jihadis. एक तो field jihadi है, So they go and they blow up the places, and then they carry plastic explosive in their underwear. They try to blow up the airplanes, shoot people in the mall and everything. Then there is another type, which are the living room jihadis. They justify everything. They inspire these field jihadis. So let's call Yasir Qadhi an Islamic theologian, come living room jihadi.
Right.
Okay. So in 2011, New York Times carried a very extensive article about him. And they said a lot of his students write to him about jihad, asking him what kind of jihad they should be waging. And he advised them, if you are in the United States or in the civilized world, then you should wage the jihad of the tongue, meaning jihad of the pen. Okay, so you brainwash everyone, you glorify jihad, and then you radicalize as many people as they can. I think that's the meaning of jihad of the tongue. And then, if you are in the Muslim world, he used a very particular phrase. I had actually noted it down. Dekho, kya hai? So he said, if you are living in other countries, then the responsibilities of the Muslims would be different. That means they have to wage a different type of jihad, which I mean is actually killing people. Okay, so that is Yasir Qadhi for you. And then a couple of years back, he also landed himself in a controversy. He declared, I think he was a bit caught unaware. So because I think his email was leaked and all of that stuff happened. So he said the standard Islamic narrative has holes in it. Okay, that
Has holes in it.
yeah, has holes in it. Okay, so the
Okay.
standard Islamic narrative is, look, the Quran has an uninterrupted transmission. It was perfectly as revealed at the time of Muhammad, and it has been perfectly preserved and everything. And of course, we all know that's not the case. Anyone who has studied the history of Quran and the text and everything, we all know that's different. But Muslims don't believe that. But when it comes from
We
an
we
imam,
we even know where it is adapted from.
exactly, we know that. Okay, so
Mm.
we know, where all they copied it from and which Syriac text they copied from. We know all of those
Yes,
things,
yes,
but
yes. All
Muslims
that
do not know
Ginza
that.
Rabba and everything that all comes into it.
Exactly. But when it comes from one of their own imams and one of their most respected conservative fundamentalist scholars, that sends shockwaves around the Islamic world. So he landed himself in trouble. Okay, so that is Yasir Qadhi for you. Okay, so he has all
Actually,
the
this Qadi, when they write
Mm.
DH in Urdu, standard Urdu is pronounced as Z. So
Qadi,
it's
right?
actually Qazi. But since he is
Ah,
trying to be in Arab, so he changes it to DH instead of Z.
ah,
Like
got
Zimma
it.
is pronounced as
Acha,
Zimma.
acha, I didn't know that. Okay.
Zimmi in Urdu is Zimmi.
That's correct. Yeah, Dimi is Zimi. That I am
So
aware of.
Riyadh, what you say, Riyadh is
Okay.
actually pronounced in Urdu as Riyaz.
Acha. Okay, then this would have become Qazi in that case,
Okay,
right?
yeah,
Okay.
Qazi. And Abu Dhabi, we call Abu
Ah,
Dhabi, but
right,
it's
right.
pronounced in Urdu as Abu Dhabi,
Hmm. Got it. Got it.
like
That's very
Ramadan and
interesting.
Ramazan. Okay.
Got it. Okay. All right. I was not aware of this linguistic parallels they had between Urdu and Arabic. Okay, that's informative. Thank you. So, about a month ago, Yasir Qadhi, he released a video, and it's there on YouTube.
Yes,
The
I
title
have
of
it
the
here.
video,
I,
the
I
title of
have
the
it on
video
my
is,
screen.
you brought it up. All right, very good. Okay, so he says the tragedy of Babri Masjid. Okay, so it's not a tragedy for Hindus that Babri Masjid was built in the first place. अब Babri
Hmm.
Masjid गया वहां पे Ram Mandir आ गया, so that is a tragedy for them. Okay, and he also rails and rants a lot about Hindustan, our history, and all the usual stuff we hear from the Marxist historians, that there was no India to begin with, and it's all the gift of Muslims, and of course he'll blabber a lot. He will say things like, Aurangzeb created India, okay, and
Yeah,
uh,
Aurangzeb.
no other
Aurangzeb is the
king.
father of India, is it? Yeah.
He's the father of India, and he makes statements like, no other Indian king even ruled 1/6 of the empire that Aurangzeb ruled, and all he had to do is
Oh,
search for the
naturally,
empire of Ashoka,
if history begins only from
only from
632, then
632
obviously,
exactly.
then obviously nobody has ruled before that. Yes,
Of course,
there
of
cannot be
course.
any Chandragupta Vikramaditya or Chandragupta
Nothing.
Maurya or
No. No
there cannot.
Choras, no
And of course,
Pallavas, nothing.
Shri Ram and Shri Krishna are mythical figures anyway.
Of course. And then we don't have anything
according to
like
them.
Bharat Varsha and all these things. And
Hmm.
anyway, that's where he started. And then he laments throughout the video. And as part of that, he makes 4 arguments. ये एक एक करके उसको डिसेक्ट करें.
बिल्कुल.
Okay. So the first one, he starts with, there is no evidence for the existence of Bhagavan Rama, and nobody other than the Hindus believe that Rama is God. This is his first argument. Okay. So, and of course, all he had to do is to look at the converse of
Okay.
this
He doesn't
argument.
reckon that Buddhists also regarded him as one.
Of course, for him, it doesn't matter, right? Everyone is kafir. Okay, Buddhist, Hindu में क्या फर्क पड़ता है? Okay, दोनों kafir है. Okay, so
Okay.
if Jains, Hindus, Buddhists, they all recognize, and the Sikhs, they all recognize, Rama as God, it does not matter to them, right? So, for example, in what was it, 1857 or 58, when the Nihang Sikhs, they came, they attacked
1858.
the 1858, right? And then they, installed the image of Sri Rama, and then they did Havan, everything inside the mosque. So it doesn't matter to Yasir Qadhi. For Yasir Qadhi, except Hindus, nobody recognizes Rama as God, and there is no evidence for the existence of Bhagavan Rama. Okay, and of course, I do not know how anybody will prove the existence of God, and the same argument can be turned on its head and directed at Islam too, because they cannot prove the existence of Allah, and of course, we know that the pre-existing pagan god Allah became Allah, and of course, Christians and Jews also use the word in Arabia Allah to refer to their gods, but then apart from that, there is no proof. Okay, there is no proof that any God exists, and Allah also, we do not have any proof that He exists. But of course, the argument has a deeper meaning, right? The meaning is, it starts with the Shahada. Ya ilahi illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. That is, there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his final seal of the Prophet. And that means they have to deny the existence of every other divinity. Okay, they have to deny the gods of Hinduism. And that's why he makes that statement. And when they say that, they also emulate the example of Muhammad. And that example is, since these are all false gods, we are perfectly justified in demolishing their temples. And that's what Muhammad did. He goes to Mecca, and then he attacks the shrine of pagans, which has 360 idols, and people are worshipping. It's an active place of worship, and then he turns it into an active crime scene by, decapitating those idols and, tossing them out and everything. He takes over. So the message here, the implied message which all of his Muslim audience understand is, this is a false god, and then hence the Ram Janmabhoomi Mandir, the original Mandir, deserves the same fate that the Mecca pagan temple suffered. Okay, which means, you can go and desecrate that, and you can erect a mosque on top of that, or you can convert that into a mosque, and that's the message. Okay. So, and of course, the implied here is also the very arrogant supposition that Allah is all powerful and mighty, and that's why we are able to go on and inflict all this pain and suffering and damage on the temples of the Kafis. That's the message, right? And even if you look at Chachnama and other things, that's urging it, right? Qasim comes to India because he was so full of faith. A 17-year-old Qasim was able to lay waste to the kingdom of Raja Dahir, and then massacre all of these Hindus, and then hence arise Muslims. Let's do the same thing to the Hindus. So implied here is the message that Allah has bestowed us with all the power and all the might, and that's why if we had demolished the temple, who cares? It's anyway a temple of false god, and it deserved that fate.
Even though they lost the caliphate
They lost the
to the
caliphate.
Kafirs. To the
Not only
Kafirs.
the caliphate. 930 में जब अबू ताहिर आया था वहां पे, so Abu Tahir, was the Carmatian, right? Those are the very
Yes.
militant Shia sect. So Abu Tahir invades Mecca, okay, and he gives Muslims the same treatment Muhammad had earlier given the pagans, okay, and later on the Muslims would give the same treatment to the Hindus. But
Takes away the
Abu
holy
Tahir,
stone.
he takes the holy stone. Okay, he does two things. He first quotes Quran, 397, where Allah says, this is Masjid al-Haram, and then I have made it safe for the Muslims. And then he enters the place during Hajj, he kills all the pilgrims, and throws their dead bodies into the Zamzam well, and then he recites 397. He says, Allah has made this place safe. Okay, look how safe it is now. Okay, then he takes that stone. He takes that stone from Kaaba. वो लेके चला गया, बहरीन लेके गया उधर, and then in Bahrain he puts it in the toilet commode. Okay, and then he people use that for defecating, urinating, everything for the next 22 years. Okay, usko tod diya, he breaks into 7 pieces, and then he uses it for this purpose. Then after 22 years he bundles it back, puts it in a sack, and throws it into the masjid in Kufa. Okay, and then he says along with a note, I took it away, now I have returned it, do what you want. And now Muslims, they bring it back to Kaaba, they stitch the 7 pieces together, they put it there, and now they are back in Hajj pilgrimage. They are going there, they are worshipping it, they are kissing it, and everything. Not realizing for a minute, for 22 years, that was the toilet commode, okay, of Abu Tahir and Carnations. Okay. So, so, but then, the likes of Yasir Qadhi do not realize that, the kind of treatment, the violence they inflict upon the believers of other religion has been inflicted upon their holiest shrine in Mecca. Okay, without the Muslims even realizing. At least there is a difference. We Hindus, when they came and destroyed about 40,000 temples, we remembered that. Okay, and then it was a tragedy, and we are only overcome militarily, but not spiritually. And we all the time we fought back and we got it back. But Muslims who are going to Mecca don't even know. Okay, the stone they are kissing where it had been before.
Actually, there's a fundamental problem here. You know what?
Hmm.
See, under the uh, what is called the mm, our dharmic traditions, deity is forever,
Right.
and the deity can be housed in a murti. The murti can be broken, can be stolen away, but the
Correct.
deity remains. So that is the fundamental supposition as
Yeah.
far as Hinduism is concerned, and it is also recognized under Hindu law,
Right.
also recognized by the Indian Supreme Court,
Right.
also recognized in the Ram Janambhoomi temple decision. They specifically mentioned that uh, particular case. It's known as the Ram Janaki Mandir case. They
Correct.
mentioned it there.
Yeah.
There are other cases also. So, as far as Hindus are concerned, there's always a case. Okay, so what if you built a mosque over there? The deity
Correct.
remains. The place
Correct.
belongs to the deity. The deity is
Exactly.
forever,
Yeah. Exactly.
unless there is a proper visarjan. The deity will remain there.
Exactly. That's correct. That's absolutely correct.
Whereas, as far as Muslims are concerned, according to their theology, first of all, why are they kissing a stone?
Yeah.
And
Exactly. That
if
too, a
they
stone
are
picked up from
kissing,
the toilet commode of Carnatians.
yes, so it becomes desecrated because if you tear away a page of Quran, it becomes desecrated.
Correct.
So a stone, a holy stone broken, gets desecrated. So how
Right.
can they use it again? So that is my
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. And not only that, right? So, and yeah, in spite of all of this arrogance, right? Allah has empowered us, and nothing can happen to Mecca. Mecca is safe. Everything. The Carmatians in 930 they come, and right in Mecca they say, look, we have debunked your Allah. We have debunked your Quran. Right? That's what he's saying now. Of course, when the counter to this argument could be that if someone like Yasir Qadhi thinks that uh, Hindu gods are false, and hence we can totally trample your belief, and we can come and desecrate your temple, demolish your temples, and build mosque on top of that. Can the same not be done to their mosques? I'm not recommending that. We won't do that. Okay, we Hindus, uh, we we may disagree with Islam as a religion. We may disagree with the theology of Islam, but then Hinduism is not about destroying other places of the place of worship of other religions.
This,
Even
the Spaniards did it.
the Spaniards did it, Carmatians did it, but we have not done that, right? And that's not in our way of thinking, and we are not recommending that. But what amazes me is all of these Islamic fundamentalists and fanatics, who are so convinced of jihad, and who are so blindly advocating destroying the temples of other people, don't pause for a minute and think, what if others use the same methods on us? What if they came and demolished our mosques? What if they demolished Mecca and Medina? And what if they demolished the mosque on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem? They don't think about it for a moment. Okay, so there is a complete lack of opposite thinking. There is a complete lack of empathy.
I'll add to that.
Hmm.
I'll add to that. In, I think, 1805, the people from Najd, these same Saudis, had occupied Mecca, and I think it remained occupied for about 10 years.
Right.
And they did wide desecration even at that time.
Yeah.
And again, even today, 1925, it is not under Muhammad's descendants, the Hashmis. The
The
Hashmis have
Hashmis are
been
in Jordan,
thrown out.
right? They are not even in Saudi
They are in
Arabia.
Jordan. They are in
Yeah.
Jordan. And this
Yeah.
is again occupied by the Najdis.
Yeah.
It is
मुझे
Deen
लगता है
Hijazi.
मुझे मुझे लगता है हमारा एमबीएस उसको ठीक करने वाला है अभी.
in, in account after account, it is not known as Islam initially. It's known as Deen Hijazi,
Yeah. Right.
the religion of Hijaz.
Yeah.
And that Hijaz is no more. Hijaz
Correct.
is Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. Exactly. So anyway, I think Mohammed bin Salman is on the way to fixing it because already, you know, the children cannot be taken to mosques, and they have started teaching excerpts from Ramayana, Mahabharata, and everything. I think I'm
Yes,
looking forward to a
they are
day.
ahead of India. Even India,
They
it
are
is
ahead
not
of
taught.
India. मुझे लगता है just like that we have Dakshin, Kashi and all these things in India, and we have this Rameshwaram in South India. All of these are, Dakshin, instances of the temples in North India. We are going to have very soon a Paschim Ram Janmabhoomi in Saudi Arabia. That will make the Momins totally implode. Okay. That will be going nuclear. Okay,
They're
so
already hurting after this Abu Dhabi temple.
Abu Dhabi temple is literally hurting them. So anyway, that was his first argument. The first argument was, Rama did not exist, and it's not a real god, and nobody but Hindus believe it. And implied here is, so what? If somebody had demolished the temple, and we can always respond, beta jaake देखो अबू ताहिर ने क्या किया 930s AD में. Okay, so and the stone you are kissing in Kaaba, that will tell the full story for you. Okay, so second argument he makes is no temple existed beneath the mosque. Okay, and some of the arguments he makes are so ridiculous that even he should be embarrassed about making those arguments. He says no good scholar accepts on good evidence that there was a temple beneath the mosque, and when the archaeologists dug that place, they found some bones.
So what logic does he follow? The Quranic logic or scientific
Oh,
logic?
इस्लामिक लॉजिक और कुछ नहीं है. मतलब आर्ग्यूमेंट
Islamic
आप
logic.
देखिए, आर्ग्यूमेंट देखिए.
Islamic
When
logic is
archaeologists,
simple. Islamic logic is very plain. Whatever is written in the book
yeah,
is true. That's all.
it's a truth claim, right? There is no logic in Islam. It's only truth claim.
Yeah,
And
it's a truth.
but he argues when the archaeologists dug under the mosque, all they found was some bones. Okay, and even the Marxist historians of India would be ashamed of making an argument like that. But this guy doesn't have any shame. But I think when you have trained enough jihadis, three of whom are convicted, becoming underwear bombers and everything, I think whatever shame a normal human being has would have left you, would have abandoned you. Okay, so he makes that statement. So many socha, why don't we at least present some of the evidence, which some of our top scholars like Meenakshi Jain, Professor Meenakshi Jain, Professor B.B. Lal, B.R. Mani, K.K. Mohammed, and many others have summarized. Coin Rodels and others have summarized. But why don't we summarize a few of those? Correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there were two major phases of excavation, right? The first one was done by Professor B.B. Lal and his team, and K.K. Mohammed was part of that team as well. That was in 1976, 77. That's when it started. And in fact, it was only published in the Archaeological Survey publications, and it was not even known to the public until the Marxist historians started doing false propaganda, from 1989. That's when Professor B.B. Lal came out and made all of those available in the public domain, in the popular domain. But anyway, there are second one was after the after Babri Masjid was demolished in 1992. That the dome and everything was demolished. Then the second excavation was led by Professor B.R. Mani, again one of the topmost archaeologists of India. So between these two excavations, they brought out so much evidence. And in the words of Professor Meenakshi Jain, we have hundreds and hundreds of pieces of evidence that testify to the existence of temple dedicated to Sri Rama, which was demolished and upon which the mosque was built by Babur, and zero evidence to the contrary, meaning zero evidence that tells that there was no temple and the mosque was built on virgin soil. That was the argument made by the Marxist historians, Romila Thapar and that gang of four, Irfan Habib, R.S. Sharma, D.N. Jha, four charlatans, four frauds, whose knowledge can be written on a pinhead and still you'll have enough room to accommodate the trash written by other Marxist scholars. Okay, but then,
I
they
just
made it.
add to this,
Hmm,
add to this, or maybe
बताइए.
you might know it already, because this excavation, these ASI findings are also covered in the Ram Janambhoomi judgment.
Yeah,
I'm sure
absolutely.
you would have read it.
Yes,
You'd have
I
read
have
it.
read that. I have read that.
Yes.
And
The
and
only
also
thing,
Kishore
they
Kunal also
most of the people
summarized that
here
quite extensively.
in India, there's a variation. And the variation is because uh, they say that no evidence was found of
Mhm,
temple demolition. Now, in a way,
mhm.
it is like saying that uh, uh, the absence of proof is the proof of absence.
Yeah.
That's what they are arguing here, because the Supreme Court says that okay, the ASI has clearly established that there
Mhm.
was a very large structure beneath the mosque, which was a temple, but they have not established whether it was built. The mosque was built after abolishing it, after demolishing it.
Yes, but let me clarify that point. Professor B.R.
So that
Mani.
is only a circumstantial evidence. So ASI doesn't give a clear finding on that. Because it's
Well,
not a black and white case like it is in Kashi,
well,
where
actually,
it is possible to give.
No, actually, Professor B.R. Mani clarifies that, okay, in one of his extensive interviews as well as in one of the publications. So, but here is what he points out. Okay, so what happens, you have these pillars, right, right on top, and then below the pillars there were the pillar bases. Okay, the base was always a little wider than the pillar itself. That's why that's the base is made of bricks, and then he points out the pillar was severed from the bases. Okay, it was cut and taken out from the base. That's actually proof that the temple was demolished and the mosque was stood up on top of that, because these pillars were reused in the mosque. In fact, that's one of the many evidences. Like, for example, uh, there are 12 pillars inside the mosque, and all of those 12 pillars had been cut from the base, and then they had been put inside the temple. And at the bottom of the pillar, you have this the Purna Kalasham, right? The Purna Kalasham is one of the Ashtamangala Chinnam in Hinduism, because it's one of those auspicious symbols or signs. Okay, so which you will find all of the in all of the pillars inside the temples. So what they have done at the time of building the mosque was to cut the pillar out and put it inside, and then put some plaster of Paris on top of that on one side, but still on all the 12 of the pillars inside the mosque. Uh, B.R. Mani and his team, again K.K. Mohammed was part of the team. He also explains that in one of his interviews. So there are 12 of those. All of those had been severed. That's actually telltale proof that it was demolished by the builders of the mosque, and then the same material was used. Okay.
Right.
Then you have two more pillars right outside the mosque, and these 14 were already identified by B.B. Lal himself, right, in the very first discovery. Then, when B.R. Mani starts excavating, now they can use, after 1992, since the mosque has been brought down, they can use excavating equipments, bulldozers, and everything. They now start digging. They go several feet below. I forgot how many feet. Was it 14 feet or 24 feet? Something like that, right? They go below. That's when they cut through many layers of that, starting with the post-Mughal layer, the Mughal layer, then they go back to the Rajput layer, then the Gupta period, then the Shunga period, then the period all the way up to 7 BCE. That's where, the northern painted graveware period of Bibi Lal and the parallels with Chitrakuta, then Shringaverapura and all of those things they find below that, and then way below that they go up to 1300 BCE. Okay, that's the oldest layer up to which they go, and then what they find at this stage in 1992 when they start the excavation, BR Money finds another 50 more pillars outside. So in all, 64 pillars, load-bearing pillars, supported the temple. That tells you how massive that temple would have been. Okay, so and all of these pillars have been dated by Professor B.B. Lal and subsequently by Professor B.R. Mani to 1100 AD. So that is about 12th century. That's at the beginning of the 12th century. This is evidence number one that a temple was demolished, and then right on top of the temple, this Babri Masjid was built by reusing the very own pillars, including the Ashtamangala Chinnam, which is the Purna Kalasham of the temple. At the base of these pillars, they were all reused by Babur and his marauders in building the temple. That was evidence number one. Then evidence number two is Makara Pranali, right? Makara is crocodile, and Pranali is roughly translate means a water channel, right? So when you go into the Garbhagriha of the temples, what they have is they do all the abhishekam, okay, with water, with milk and honey and all of these things, and then they start collecting at the bottom, and from there they go through this Makara Pranali, and from there they flow northward towards Sarayu River. They found this entire Makara Pranali. Again, nobody in his sane mind will think that a mosque will have Makara Pranali, and this comes straight out of a temple, and these gets demolished. But then in the they did not even remove all the evidence from the crime scene, so that's why we are able to go back and find that.
The operative word is sane mind.
Exactly. Exactly. You cannot have a sane mind and then become a Muslim, and even on top of that, cannot become a Ghazi, right? And Baba described himself as a Ghazi. Okay, so he declared that I'm a Ghazi and I'm here to destroy Hinduism and destroy their temples and everything. Yeah, you are absolutely right. Nobody in their sane mind would have done all these things. That's what they did. But that's evidence number two. Evidence number one was the pillars with all of the Purna Kalasham at the base of the pillar, and then number two evidence is Makara Pranali, which is only there in Hindu temples. And then number three is Amalaka. Amalaka is the disc. When you look at the temple, so you have the tower of
Yes,
the
yes,
temple called the Gopuram, right? And
on
you
the
have
shikhar.
the right on the you have the shikara of the temple, and then you have the kalasha on the top, and right below the kalasha you have this disc, right? And that disc is known as Amalaka. So even like some of the South Indian viewers of this program, if they have been to temples like Pattadakallu, okay, for example, in Karnataka, which was a center of uh, temple architecture, you will find a lot of those temples they have this Amalaka. Okay, that is the disc right below the kalasha of the temple, and that was also found by the archaeologists after 1992. Then on top of that, KK Mohammed points out there were 263 temple objects, including carvings of deities, carvings in terracotta, and all of these things found in the temple. That's 263 of those. That's evidence number four. Okay. Then evidence number five was totally damning. There was a 12th century inscription that was dug out, and then it points out, and then it's a 20-line inscription, and it says, "This is the temple of Vishnu Hari, who carried out the vata of Vali and Ravana." Okay, so that's a direct. It cannot be more explicit than that. This is a very direct reference to Sri Rama, because he kills Vali in the battle, and then he kills Ravana, the ten-headed Ravana, and that is written down in an inscription. And you may recall when this was discovered, the first claim made by the charlatan Irfan Habib was that, oh, this was fabricated by Archaeological Survey of India, and it was planted on the site of Babri Masjid. Do you remember that?
I know, but then the
Yeah.
government at that time was After when the final findings came out, the
Yeah,
UPA had already come into existence.
yeah, it had. And not only that,
And
even
the judgment by the Allahabad High Court was also given when the UPA was there.
exactly. And even Irfan Habib himself, after making all this noise, had to go back and admit, yes, no, it actually came from the same site. Because, based on epigraphic grounds, based on stylistic ground, art historians weighed in, and, all that genuine scholars, right? BB Lal and everyone, they jumped in. And, it was so embarrassing for Irfan Habib and that gang of four. Even they had to backtrack and admit. But this was a damning evidence, that. A 12th century inscription that tells who built this temple and who's the deity to whom it is dedicated, and it was the Janmastan of Sri Rama, who had killed Vali and Ravana, and that inscription was there, and that's evidence number 5. Then B.R. Mani points out that starting from 4th century AD, that site in Ayodhya where Ram Janmabhoomi stands today and where Babri Masjid was encroaching for 500 years was a place of continuous worship. Okay, and they have dug out so much of evidence, and Meenakshi Jain talks about that. She also talks about that in the book Battle for Rama, and the evidence is so overwhelming that. Nobody should have denied it in the first place. Unfortunately, we had a group of Marxist historians and an English media that colluded with them, and then they were peddling a very false narrative for some time. Of course, it did not last for too long, but then they were able to get along with some time. But the point here was, B.R. Mani points out that iconic images from the Shunga period, okay, which is even before 4th century, but Gupta period, there are massive numbers of iconic images. They have been found from the same site. That
I think
again,
we have to summarize these points because
yeah.
we need to go beyond Yasir Qadhi also.
Oh, absolutely. Let's do that. Okay. So anyway, so the bottom line is, that Ramjumi. So the bottom line is the evidence was overwhelming that there was a temple right there, and then which was demolished. Then right on top of that, mosque was built. Okay. So he was denying that, and then once again, let me try to just address a couple of more arguments he makes, both of which are ridiculous. Then we'll go beyond that, and then Yasir Qadhi says that. The entire conflict started only after 1858, after the first war of independence or the Sipahi mutiny, and no evidence of the temple exists. But then, the evidence is so, and in fact, he even denies Ayodhya existed. He says no such place called Ayodhya existed. All one has to do is to look at Skanda Purana, look at Ayodhya Mahatmya, which was, written in 1034 CE, and the entire section is about the glory of Ayodhya. And then Guru Nanak visits Ayodhya in 1510, and then he converts one of the Muslims
And
there,
what?
and then he
When was Valmiki Ramayana written?
of course, yeah, but I'm only talking about, right, in the contemporary period. We don't even have to go back to Valmiki Ramayana, but even in the contemporary period, right, and even the East India Company officials like William Finch, Joanne Delate, Thomas Herbert, and all of these guys, and even Jesuit priests like Joseph Tiffenteller and Mentale and others, French scholar Mentale and others, they come and then they repeatedly write, and all of this happens between 1600 and 1800, and all of them they talk about a temple for Sri Rama, which is now in ruins, but still Hindus are coming there and worshipping all the time. And then on auspicious days like
Yes,
Ram Navami,
all,
thousands
all
of
this
people
is
gather.
all this is recorded in the evidence.
Yeah, it's all of this recorded in the evidence. But you
Recorded
know,
in the evidence.
you remember, like the someone like Yasir Qadhi is addressing a Muslim audience who are ignorant, and he's peddling these lies, hoping nobody is going to go there and check it. Okay?
Right.
And then the final piece he makes is going to induce a laugh riot for you. Okay, he says he now wants to exculpate Babur. Okay, so we all know who Babur was. Okay, Babur was a Kasi, and very first year he comes to India in 1526, he demolishes a temple. We'll talk about it in a second. But then he says Babur was a great poet. Okay, and then Babur maintained a diary in the form of Babur Nama. And if he had really demolished the temple, he would have recorded about that, and he makes no mention of that. Okay, and
I know. But
actually,
there are a few pages missing, I'm told.
Bilkul. So, Meenakshi Jain talks about that. Actually, Meenakshi Jain makes two wonderful arguments around that. Okay, number one, Babur does not record every one of the incidents, even the important incidents in his life. One of that is the conquest of Samarkand, right, where he takes the help of a Shia chieftain, and then he goes and attacks Samarkand. he does not mention that in Babur Nama because he's a Sunni Muslim and he doesn't want to upset the Sunni clergy, so it's left out. And then same thing, when in 1526 he conquers the first temple he destroys is that of Kalki Avatara. That's in Sambal. Okay, he goes there, he gets it destroyed. He does not mention that in Babur Nama, but then his general, Mir Hind Beg, okay, he has left an inscription. He says, based on the firman of Babur, I have demolished this temple and I have erected a masjid in its place. Okay, so, and obviously, just because Babur does not make an explicit confession does not mean anything. But as you said, there are pages missing because Meenakshi Jain points out on the 2nd of April, 1528, Babur records he and his army have reached Ayodhya. Okay, then no recording is there until the 18th of September. Okay, those 5 months, everything is missing. Those pages are missing. That's when who was his general?
Mir
Who
Baqi.
Mirbaki destroys the mandir and then he builds the temple on top of that. And for Yasir Qadhi, it does not matter. He says that, oh, if Babur had really destroyed the temple, he would have made a note of that. Well, if the pages are missing, then he's not going to make the note of it. And he has left many things out as well. And if that's the
Moreover,
only way to.
there is an extensive local lore
Mhm.
that records in detail all the battles that took place and
Yeah,
how Babur came there after losing the battle at Bayana. He
yeah.
there was this temple and there was this great master, Swami Shantanand, and some Sufi became his disciple,
Mm.
and the Sufi actually he squealed on the whole business, and because he had also acquired some powers, Babur came to know of it, and he came to this guy called I think Maula um, Ghazal Bakhsh
Ah, correct.
Abbas.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mo- Ghazal Bash Abbas. Okay, this guy Ghazal Bash Abbas. So he's the one who reads a dua for Babur, and in lieu, he asks for the temple to be demolished.
Right.
And as is, I think we know from Prithviraj time, our people, they have never known their enemy. They're not
Right.
very bright about discovering who the enemy is.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that is the local lore that goes, and they have recorded 76 battles,
yeah.
and the 1992 was 77th.
Right. And all of them did. And the interesting part is Babur comes in 1526, the third battle of Panipat. And the very first deed he does is to go and destroy the Mandir in Sambal, the Kalki Avatar Mandir. So this was their mission.
Yeah,
It's
he
not
calls
as if
himself a Ghazi.
he got to
I was
Ghazi
in,
and then
I was
it's not as if,
interviewing Abhas Maldiyar, who's just
yeah.
released a very good volume on Babur,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
he has read the Babur Nama in the original Chagatai Turkish translation,
Hmm.
translated from original Chagatai Turkic language, not from the Persian
Hmm.
translation of it. So, these things come out the Baba's character comes out very plain.
Right.
He is a fanatic Muslim. Simple as that.
Correct. Correct. Indeed.
So
And
let's go
anyway, and
beyond
anyway,
Qazi.
I have seen with a lot of the Momins in the West, and even some of the seculars, the secular white people, the so-called liberals
Yes,
and
let's go to
others.
some of the secular white people. Now
Ah,
that
so
the
so
Momin
mera
argument we have
yeah, Momin
seen.
argument to dekh liya. Some of my
Hmm.
secular white liberal friends, they were asking, oh, all these things happened 500 years back. What's the point of rewriting history? Okay, so look, I gave them the response. First of all, for us, it's a sacred site, but we don't have to do all these things. The Muslims could have just come and told, uh, we don't endorse the deeds of Mughals and other sultans. They came and demolished 40,000 temples. We don't support any of that. Don't hold us accountable. And uh, as a gesture of goodwill, we will return 108 sites to you. Okay, choose any 108 temples. Okay, and then
Hmm.
go and rebuild your temples. And I said that would have been the perfect solution. Perfect harmony would have prevailed. And we Hindus usually we bend over backwards to accommodate our enemies, and we would have said, अच्छा आपने 108 मंदिर हमें वापस दे दिया, then we will help you build 108 mosques. Okay, we are suicidal. We would have done that in all likelihood. Okay, so that would have been perfect harmony, but they did not do that. And to get a single temple back, we have been fighting for 500 years. And just the lawsuits, it started with 1858 complaint, right? When that person signed said, this is Masjid e Janamstan. Okay. And here someone has come and desecrated. So that's when the cases start. Okay. The rudimentary aspects of the case start. So we had to fight for some like 170 years to get one temple back. So now we are not going to back out. Okay. We want all the 40,000 temples back. Okay. So
This 40,000 is an exaggeration, of course.
we don't know that. Okay. So because see, the
No,
point
because there
is,
is only one documentation. You see, the documentation is done by Sitaram Goel.
not only Sitaram Goyal, but also,
He documents about 1800 and 1900. He says it's a preliminary
it's a preliminary
documentation.
one, but there is another book which
Preliminary
also
one.
summarizes that. Eliot and Dawson, they summarize from all the Islamic sources the temples that were demolished, and everywhere. Of course, the Muslims could have exaggerated the claims when they say in Varanasi they demolished 1,000 temples, where they exaggerating, where some of those very small temples and also some of the temples are complexes. A complex would have had sannidhis for different deities, and they might have counted those as different temples, but the point being, thousands of temples are erased. Okay, sorry, thousands of temples are razed, and mosques were stood up on top of that, and a lot of the temple properties were stolen. Okay, so we are going to want every one of those back. So we are not going to stop with getting three of the
Yes, but I
temples
think
back.
we need to do extensive work on that.
We have to.
It's not
I agree.
good enough to just say that, okay, there are 40,000 temples. You have to prove
Sure,
those
sure, I agree.
40,000 temples. So, therefore, I think it's wise to concentrate on the documentation that's already done by Sitaram Goel.
Sitaram Goyal and others, and Eliot Dawson also
So,
has pretty good
he's,
documentation.
he has
If you leave out the
about
numbers,
2,000.
if you leave out the numbers till
My
you are
point is
going,
that Sitaram Goel, he consulted Eliot and Dawson.
correct,
His research is very extensive, and he's
right.
consulted all the Islamic sources, and after that, and then from the ground, and then he has reached these numbers, and they're about 1900.
It's not comprehensive though. I'll tell you why.
No, it's not comprehensive. He was
No,
supposed to do
no, no.
more work on it,
I'll tell you
but
why.
he
Like for
died.
example, I forgot the name of the author, and I will share it in the notes at the bottom. Like when Tipu Sultan waged a campaign in Malabar Coast in Kerala, he raised about 320 temples. Okay, those have been documented by a Keralite scholar. Okay, so with the list of the temples, the dates when dates when they were demolished by Tipu Sultan, and what kind of massacres were carried out along with that. So a lot of those or do not figure in Sitaram Goyal's list. And similarly, the list of temples that Malik Kafur raised in South India, so those also do not figure in that list entirely. So yes, but I agree with you. Your point is well taken. We have to be very thorough with the numbers. But even if you're going
Absolutely,
super conservative, we are looking at well over 2,000 big temples that were raised.
maybe at 2,000 at the very minimum.
Yeah, exactly. So
2,000 at
that
the
was the
very minimum.
reaction. I think the bottom line is lot of the Momins are imploding, and a lot of the liberal Westerners, they are now dumbfounded because what they are seeing is Hindu resurgence, because they also recognize this temple that's coming up is not happening in a void, right? So with Modi, a temple is coming up in Janamstan, and Modi is going to UAE and he's inaugurating the temple, and Boeing and Airbus are coming to Gujarat and manufacturing Apache helicopter and the airplanes and everything. So they
And there's
recognize
one coming up in Bahrain as well.
in Bahrain as well. Yeah, that's the next temple coming up there, right? So, but what they are seeing is a convergence of India's economic prosperity and India's self-assertiveness as a Hindu civilization. Okay, so at some point, the way I understand the white liberals, they tilt in the direction the wind blows. Okay, and if they figure that look, the Hindus are on the ascendancy, they will वो तो चुपचाप रहेंगे उसके बाद.
Quite right. What about the Western media?
Uh, they have not covered it much, except the usual snide remarks that come in, New York Times and other things, and very negative coverage, which is, how we demolished the temple and how the Hindutva, the Hindu nationalist right, is, asserting itself, and how all of this has threatened the Muslim minorities of India and all of these usual stories. But this is not a story which is going to even strike as novel to anyone, not even to the white Americans, because this is a story they've been telling all the time. Okay, there's nothing new. Okay, even the verbiage they are using is nothing new.
Quite right. So, what do we say in conclusion? The Ram Mandir has been a great civilizational resurgence as far as India is concerned and a civilizational shock to the rest of the world.
Both of those are very true, and I think I'm also looking a little deeper than that. I think what I would do is I will use the words of KK Mohammed, archaeologist, kind of paraphrase him. The way he puts it is, look, Hindus are a very generous, very large-hearted people. He gives an example. Akbar gives a farman to some of the sannyasis in Hanumangadi, near Ayodhya, near the mandir, and then along with that, he hands over the site of a dilapidated mosque. Okay, and that mosque is no longer in use, and as part of that donation, they get it, and then a couple of centuries later, some Muslims come and ask them, uh, Swamiji's, Santji's, can we offer some prayers here? And then they not only agree and they say, we will actually renovate that part of the mosque so that you guys can go and do prayers. So KK Moment says, this is the generosity Hindus have always shown, and it's time we Muslims reciprocated that. And, I think the message I have is, uh, uh, in 1989 or until 1989, especially in the 80s, a lot of Muslims were willing to hand over Ram Janmabhoomi, right? The Babri Masjid to Hindus. In fact, the masjid wouldn't even have been demolished. They agreed because that was never a place of worship for them. It was never a functioning mosque throughout history. And they also recognized, look, it was built on a temple. It's a very important temple for Hindus. It's Ram Janmabhoomi. Hindus have always worshipped. Can we give it back? And it was the Marxist historians who went and brainwashed them and told them, don't give it to them. Okay. And Mohammed says they destroyed a society. That's the phrase, KK Mohammed uses. So I think my message is, I don't care about the Marxist historians. They are worse than prostitutes. They don't have any scruples. They will do anything to lay waste to society because that way they can get a bit of kick out of that. But for Muslims, I'll say this, right? And for Muslims, Sri Rama is part of your heritage too. Your ancestors are converted, by sword, and then that's not your fault. Whether you remain Muslim today or not, that's a different story. I wish you come back. I wish you did a Garvapsi. But even if you do not, Sri Rama, Ramayana, Mahabharata, Hinduism, everything is part of your heritage. Okay, so you don't have to become a Muslim fundamentalist. And if Hindus have been so accommodative of you, then you can reciprocate that, and don't be misled by the Marxists, the fundamentalists, and then living room jihadis like Yasir Qadhi and others. Instead, think of yourself. Think of yourself as part of dharmic landscape. A great civilization called India, and you are part of that, and reciprocate that. Because if you don't reciprocate, Hindus have begun asserting themselves, we'll still come out on top. But if you reciprocate, we'll together come out on top.
Quite right. I think that's a very, very optimistic note on which to end this discussion
Yeah,
today.
yeah,
And I think this Ram Janambhoomi thing has been, I think, a very, very uplifting event.
yeah.
And it's probably been a real phenomenon. And maybe we can say that this is the inflection point.
This is the inflection point, and I am hoping, today we'll be closing with Jai Shri Ram, but then very soon we'll be opening with Har Har Mahadev. Okay, Jab Gyan Vapi is returned to us, and then the Shivji Ka
And
Mandir
Jai
will,
Shri Krishna.
and Jai Shri Krishna follows right after that, and then uh, in Sambal. Okay, that should be the fourth for us. Okay, Sambal mein Kalki Avatar ka mandir. Okay, Jai Kalki Avatar. That will be the fourth one. Okay, then we can keep adding four for the time being. Will do. Okay,
Quite right.
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Shri Ram.
Yeah, thank you.